and welcome to the Youth Climate Summit 2020. We are Tales from Mother Earth. My name is Chris Symons, and this is...
I'm Jenny Bailey, and it's fabulous to be here today and share with you the Youth Climate Summit, and also to share with you our Phoebe the Bee workshop. We're really excited to be part of this, and thank you. So let's tell you a little bit about our story and how we started this venture, how it came together. Really, it came together with an idea. All great things come together with an idea, from, I don't know, Iron Man to Peppa Pig. It all has to have an idea. And what it was, there was something that made us have that idea. And actually, there was a certain person called Sir David Attenborough, who is the nation's treasure, or a national treasure even. And he actually said some words last year that made us think, we can do more. We can try and do more. We can help. We can do something. Our climate is in trouble. Our environment is in trouble, and we want to do more. He actually said the words were, "Our Garden of Eden is no more." So, Chris, it wasn't the fact that it was disappearing or that it was in trouble. He actually said it was no more. So that's finished.
Yes.
And from those words, I thought, I need to do more. We need to do more. We need to get involved, and we can do more, because we've all got a park or a garden. We all breathe in this fresh air that we love so much. We can look after the birds. We can go and feed them. We can recycle more. There's so much. We go out picking up rubbish, myself and my boys, regularly. Yeah. We do beach cleans, and there's more everybody can do. But around that time when David Attenborough said that, there was also another report that came out, wasn't there? We were talking about this one.
It said that bees are the most important living organism on the planet today.
That's right, it did. And there was another report that came out telling us that a lot of the insects are in decline. And so, with David Attenborough's words and that report's findings, we were compelled to go, well, we need to do even more now. And it was amazing that one person can make a difference, but we came together as a team at Tales from Mother Earth. And because bees were very much, like Chris just said, the most important species living on the planet currently, and they've been given that title for a very, very good reason, we put together our first story, Phoebe the Bee, and you're going to see that presentation very soon.
But don't think Phoebe the honeybee is the only type of bee that there are in this country. There are over 250 different types of bee.
That's right, there are. It's incredible. Bees are just so amazing and versatile in so many ways. And in the British Isles alone, like Chris says, 250 different types.
Of which most of them, about 90% of them, are solitary bees. They either live in close, small groups, or singly, living their lives on their own.
That's right. But we're actually focusing with Phoebe the bee. She's actually a honeybee, and she's a worker honeybee. So she's one of the team, if you like, that goes out and forages and goes to the flowers and the plants and has to find the nectar and the pollen. So she's incredibly, incredibly important. So also we were talking about the different types of bees and also the size of them, because there is such an array, isn't there?
Well, we look at the honeybee, which is about, I suppose, about 10 millimetres, but they range from anything from 4 or 5 millimetres to 16 millimetres big. But right across the country and across the world, bees come in different sizes. And actually, when we talk about how long they've been around, they were much, much, much bigger a long way back. But anyway, we'll come to that later on.
Well, yeah, we'll touch on that later and give you some ideas then. So what we're actually going to do now is let's have a look at our story, Phoebe the Bee, because then you'll get an idea about her courage and her determination, because one bee really can make a difference. You'll get an idea of her plight in terms of how she's coping in today's modern environment, and what she needs from us to actually achieve her ability to survive and thrive. And that's what we want for our bees, because they're in decline at the moment, and we'll tell you a little bit about that after the story. But what we actually need to do is all come together to really look at how we can help them. So have a listen to our story, and we'll see you after that.
Welcome to Tales from Mother Earth. Today, I would like to tell you a story about a very special bee called Phoebe. Phoebe was a worker bee who lived with her mother, the queen, and their large family in a beehive on the outskirts of a sleepy country village. Each morning, Phoebe would wake up early, have a sip of honey for breakfast, before stretching her wings and taking to the skies. Feeling happy, she marveled at the carpet of colors below her, greeting the sun as she flew. Passing over a sea of red, orange, pink and purple flowers, she made her way to her favorite spot where the dandelions grew. Landing on each flower in turn, eagerly sipping the nectar and harvesting pollen, the busy bee would quickly find that she could carry no more. With her sacks overflowing, she would make her way back to the hive, content with her morning's work. Mornings flowed into days, and days into weeks as Phoebe continued her routine of collecting pollen from the wonderful flowers. Then she started to notice some changes, until, one day, everything was different. Phoebe's day started just like the others, eating a quick breakfast and taking to the skies. Looking down as she flew, Phoebe grew more and more concerned, as the vibrant colours she was used to were no longer there. They had been replaced by freshly mowed lawns, paved concrete slabs, and wooden decking. As Phoebe approached her favourite spot, she could no longer smell the sweet nectar. She circled over once familiar gardens in search of flowers that would provide the pollen to make honey back at the hive, but none could be found. Feeling exhausted, Phoebe reluctantly decided to stop her search and head back home. At the hive, she soon discovered that her sisters had found the same problem, with their favourite gardens disappearing too. As the weeks went by and the search continued, there simply wasn't enough pollen or nectar to be collected. Everyone was starting to feel very hungry and tired. Some were even struggling to take flight. However, Phoebe never gave up hope. She was determined to find a new source of nectar, knowing that just a few flowers would make all the difference. Taking to the skies once more, she flew past the flowerless gardens, resolute in her decision not to turn back this time. As the sun reached its peak, her wings began to ache, but she continued to tell herself, just one more road, just one more garden. She could feel the warmth of the sun touching her wings, lifting her spirits and driving her onwards. Flying over a wooded glen, she suddenly caught the scent of something familiar, making her heart skip a beat with excitement. She wondered, is this real, or am I just dreaming? As she cleared the trees, she couldn't believe her eyes. Below her was the most stunning meadow garden, filled with blooms of purple, red and pink. She zoomed down to get a closer look, and there they were right in front of her, a patch of her beloved golden dandelions. Landing swiftly, she took a welcome drink. The scent of the nectar was just incredible. She quickly gathered her thoughts and set to work filling her sacks with pollen. Phoebe knew she had to get back to the hive quickly to let her sisters know what she had found. As she flew, she carefully noted each landmark, plotting the course as she went. Arriving back at the hive, Phoebe tumbled in, waking everyone up. She started to sing and dance, telling her family of the amazing garden and exactly where it could be found. "Busy bees, follow me! There are loads of flowers, come and see!" Without hesitation, a troop of worker bees took flight, with Phoebe leading the way. From then on, Phoebe and her sisters continued to visit the garden, collecting enough pollen to feed their whole family. Thanks to her courage and determination to continue the search and never give up, one amazing bee saved the hive.
Welcome back. So let's think. Now, when we do this presentation in front of children, when they're actually in front of us, we ask them questions now. So we ask them, what's Phoebe's favourite flower? And why do you think this hive was having such a hard time? And what do bees actually need? What's the lesson in that story that we can all learn from? So let's take the first one. This is an easy one, really, isn't it? Chris,
Yes, dear.
what's Phoebe's favourite flower?
Now let me think for a second. It was a dandelion.
It was a dandelion, that's right, very good. And we chose a dandelion for Phoebe because dandelions are packed full of that nectar that bees actually need to make honey and to survive and thrive. It gives them that energy that they actually need to fly around. It's that sweet solution that flowers provide. So also, what sort of type of flower would you say a dandelion is?
Well, most gardeners would class a dandelion as a weed. We should never class weeds as such. They're just, as you say, as I said, flowers in the wrong place. If you look along hedgerows and out in the countryside, these flowers we call weeds turn up everywhere. And they're in such abundance, and that's great for the bees. What we tend to do is we tend to grow what we want in our gardens, and sometimes that may well be the wrong flowers.
Absolutely. It's incredible to think that across our country, 97% of our meadows have now disappeared. And that's what gives Phoebe's the trouble that she's in, and the bees across our country. It's the fact that there's not enough wildflowers and weeds. Like you say, weeds can be wildflowers and wildflowers can be weeds, absolutely. But the fact is there's not enough flowers across our land to sustain all the bees that we have. And so they're finding that they're becoming increasingly, declining in numbers, which is a real concern to all of us, because bees are so important.
Bees actually need to visit somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 flowers a day. Now when we say flowers, that's individual blooms, so you may well find that there's a header with a whole stem of blooms. So each of those little blooms each flower is visited by the bee. But imagine over 2,000 flowers a day. I wonder how many of you have 2,000 flowers in your garden? That's a good question, isn't it?
That's right. It is a very good question, because I know I had a bit of a problem with that back in the spring, because there wasn't anything growing back in the spring.
Yeah.
And when we started doing our presentations, 2,000 flowers in one garden was hard to find. But you think about it, our gardens are such important spaces, because if the areas around that are being developed and those meadows are disappearing, the farmland is disappearing, then our gardens, if we're lucky enough to have a garden, and that green area just outside our house is so vital to the wild animals, to the pollinators, and obviously to bees. And Phoebe needs that nectar-rich source of flowers that actually are in wildflowers to survive and thrive. She really does.
In fact, this year I let part of my garden grow completely wild, and I was absolutely amazed at the amount of different coloured flowers that came up. Not all at the same time, but during the course of the season, so that as one flower died off, another flower came along, and a different type of bee visited as well. My granddaughter was pointing out to me all the bees that turned up, and sometimes they were almost unrecognisable. Being that there are 250 species of bee in this country, some of them look so different, they don't actually look like bees. Keep an eye out for how many different types of what you think are bees visit your flowers.
So the other thing that we need to discuss about bees really, and the story that Phoebe the Bee is the fact that the gardens are being kept too manicured, too perfect. There's lots of decking going down, there's lots of patios being built, absolutely, because we want our gardens to be pristine, don't we? But you know what? Pristine is okay for inside the house, but outside of the house, wildlife needs a little bit more of a mess. Absolutely. It really does. Yeah. And that will allow then the animals and the insects, the bugs, the beetles and the bees and the hedgehogs and all those things to visit your garden and to get what they need, which is they want to survive, they want to thrive, they want to survive, they want to find their food source. And it's really incredible if we leave our gardens just a little bit less. We don't have to mow them within an inch of the grass. We can actually let the grasses grow a little bit more. And if we do that, it's incredible. Like Chris says with his garden, and I've left my garden to grow wild. I've got a corner that's growing completely wild, and these big 5-foot flowers came up, which was incredible, but the butterflies adored them. And I just thought, do you know what, while it's flowering, I'm going to leave it, because there are so many pollinators, there are so many bees, there are so many insects that are benefiting from me just leaving that area of my garden to grow wild. And it was so wonderful, like Chris says, it was so wonderful to watch and to actually experience that in your garden. But in the story, Phoebe the Bee, it was amazing because it was a conservationist like ourselves, and like you guys too, because you're very concerned about the environment, you're concerned about climate change, you're learning so much this week, but you can really make a difference. You can go out and you can plant some wildflower seeds anytime you want to at all. There's nothing stopping you going out there and helping the environment and helping Phoebe, because that garden that she found flying over one more house, one more garden, one more woodland, she actually found that lovely meadow garden where that person had planted those wildflower seeds. And in a way, wildflower seeds are one of the easiest things to plant, because literally you throw them.
Yeah, just scatter them.
You rake the ground, you make the ground ready for seeds, and then you throw them, and then they germinate, and then some will come up, some will get eaten by birds, but that's okay. That's okay, because they'll come through the birds out the other side, and then they'll be planted where they grow. So that's not a problem either. But that's what Phoebe found. She found the meadow garden, and it saved the hive. And through her courage and determination to fly that little bit further, she actually saved the hive. So that's our story, and we can learn a lot from that.
Now let's start with a really important question, or a really important fact actually. Did you know that every third forkful of food that you consume is there because of the work of a bee or a pollinator? We have to consider that wasps are pollinators, those horrible creatures that come after your jam sandwiches on the beach. They are pollinators. Moths, butterflies, birds.
There's so many little bees, all the insects, even a hedgehog, birds, anything can be a pollinator.
Even a human being running through a field, right, brushing past one flower onto the next flower. It's amazing actually, how bees find the flower that they need. Flowers are like, they have like, almost like landing lights, almost like an aerodrome light, and a plane's approaching it and it knows where to land.
Absolutely, it's incredible, Chris, it really is, that bees actually have 5 eyes. So they don't see in the same colour spectrum that we see. They actually see in the brightest ultraviolet lights as well as the colours we see and beyond. I mean, it's incredible. 5 eyes, you can just imagine the different arrays of colour. But Chris is absolutely right. On flowers, they actually have bee lines on the flowers, and flowers and bees have evolved together for some number of years, and we'll look at that in a bit. But it's incredible because flowers smell, and they give off that smell, don't they, for the nectar, and the bees sense, pick up that smell of that nectar, and so they go closer to the flower, and then when they can see it, they see this bright ultraviolet landing strip, if you like, for them, and then they go into land, don't they? And it's incredible. Right. And where they land, it's amazing, because where they land, they get the best nectar for their efforts. So the plant is rewarding the bee, saying, thank you so much, you're really doing me a great service. And what the service is the bees doing?
Well, they're going to take some of that pollen to the next plant.
That's right.
And the only reason why they do that is they've got dirty feet. They don't wipe their boots. And they go from one plant to the next plant, taking a bit of pollen from one plant and then touching another plant, and that allows the pollen to allow the plant to reproduce.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's incredible. With that bee line, with that ultraviolet runway, if you like, the bee will land and it will have its little feet go in either side of the plant, and the plant will make sure that its flowers within that head of that flower, the pollen sacs are there to be picked up by the bee. Now, some bees have pollen sacs on their legs, and some bees actually have hooks on their legs. So, and also some bees, like Chris says, don't wipe their shoes and don't wipe their feet. So, but the pollen is actually attracted, it's attached to, whether it goes in the sacs or whether it actually goes to the hooks. it's collected, and then obviously the bee leaves that plant and goes to another plant, and with the pollen that's on it, it deposits it and the plant reproduces. And that's how the biodiversity that we get in this world, it's by the pollinators that are so important. So again, what we need to be looking at is the importance of bees and why the bees have that title of being the most important species on the planet. And really, when you start thinking about the pollination, let's have a think for once. I wonder if they have packed lunches. Do you think they have packed lunches out there for their lunch?
Well, I don't know. Have a look in those little boxes that your mum gave you this morning. Inside you might find something nice to eat.
Now, if you have an apple in there, for instance, or a pear, or some strawberries, do you know what, when we do this with other schools, they're all in front of us and they're all putting their hands up, going, yes, I have an apple and yes, I have a pear, but obviously you guys can't do that, but I'm just envisaging now, you going, yes, I've got an apple and I've got a pear. But do you know what, a bee has actually helped it pollinate that plant to give us those crops. It's just incredible. Every plant crop you can think of that actually flowers, the pollinators have been doing their work to pollinate those crops, to pollinate those flowers, to give us that produce. So let's think about it. In this country, we've got beans, raspberries, strawberries, apples, pears, plums, everything imaginable. I mean, just going into supermarkets and looking down the aisles and thinking that everything that all this produce, if it's flowered, then chances are a bee has had a very, very important part to play in that. I think it's every third forkful of food you actually place in your mouth. So think about that when you're munching your dinners and munching your food and munching your puddings. Every third forkful or spoon that you put in your mouth, a bee has actually helped it get there.
And you have to consider also that if you eat meat, and a lot of us do, the food that the animals eat has to be pollinated. So when we say third forkful, you have to think about that as well. The animals that we might consume as well will have eaten food which have been made possible by a bee.
That's right. So there is a huge economic part of the life, if you like, that a bee plays for all of us as consumers as well. So that's another reason why they've been given that title as the most important species.
And if we go back through time and we consider the relationship between plant and pollinator, we can give it a name. It's called symbiotic or symbiosis, whereby the two they work side by side together, they work in tandem, in concert. And it's all part of evolution, and that's something else that you're learning about. And it's all part and parcel of how our planet works.
Absolutely. Plants and pollinators fit. They go together. There is a reason that plants are existing, and there's a reason that pollinators are existing, and they go together. And with pollinators on the decline, it makes perfect sense that the plants are going to be in decline. The plants give us the nourishment, they give us the crops. It just makes sense. So what we need to do is, like in our story, Phoebe the Bee, we need to get out there and we need to take some action. And we need to help the bees, the pollinators, in our environment today. But it's great to know that we can do something about it, and we know.
With this symbiosis, going back to this, it's formed over many, many years.
Oh, yes, indeed.
We're going to look at how that's... Thank you, Jenny. We're going to look at how that was formed. And we're going to have a little game here. So let's introduce you to our timeline.
So this is current day. So current day is all about technology. It's all about computers. We live in current day. Obviously we're living with a pandemic at the moment, so it's all about social distancing as well. But this represents current day. So let's put this on our timeline. Let's take Phoebe off. Okay, next.
There we go.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we're jumping along quite quickly in time because we've got quite a bit to cover, as you can imagine. But now we're at 1837, which the Victorian age begins. So those of you that have been doing history, it's all about the Industrial Revolution. And again, we're jumping on quite a bit, we're going back in time here. So now, what happens at 1066? Who's been doing history lessons recently? I'm sure 1066 is one of those dates that everybody knows after they've done history. It is, of course, the Battle of Hastings. And then after that, we're jumping on. What have you got there? Okay, we're at time, where time actually starts and Christianity begins. So that's 0, and then again, we're going back from there. So around that time, after that time, going back, we get to Romans. Let's just move the feet the other way. So we get to Romans, which is 800 BC. Then we go to 1300 BC, which is the Greece city-states are founded. So that's Athens and Sparta. Okay.
And then we're going to go to the pyramids. This is where we get likes of Tooting Carmichaels and Popocatépetl, or whatever his name was, came into being. The dawn of real civilization, I should imagine. Before that, then, we're going back to Stonehenge, when Stonehenge was built, 5000 BC. Imagine lugging those stones up the road. Don't drop that on my foot!
Okay, there's a bit of a history lesson going on here as well. So Stonehenge. So what comes after Stonehenge, Chris?
Well, it comes before Stonehenge.
Well,
in
okay,
time.
yeah, of course, going back.
Now we start looking at the beginning of the dawn of farming, and we look at the invention of pottery and just the beginning of civilization, early civilization.
Okay, so we're going back in time.
And zooming even further backwards, we're looking now at the end of the last ice age, where the sea levels lowered and the land masses, as we know them today, began to form.
Mm-hmm.
And we go back again, a long way back this time, to 65 million years BC.
Wow, that is a long way
Asteroid
back.
destruction and the end of the dinosaurs, which is probably the Cretaceous period.
Okay, so here we go. We've got current day, moving back in time, right the way through, as Chris says, to the dinosaurs. Now, what we've got here is some little Phoebe the Bees. So we've got 3. And what we tend to ask everybody in front of us is, where do you think Phoebe joined us? Where did bees join us on this amazing journey of evolution and life, really, on our planet as we know it? So some people and some children, this really gets everybody shouting at us and trying to work out whether it's left or whether it's right or whether we put them here or whether we put them there. Some children come along and put them on the Egyptians. And that makes sense because Tooting Carmichaels' casket, like Chris actually said, actually had honey in it. And they tasted the honey. I think it was thousands and thousands of years old, but it hadn't gone off. So isn't that incredible? Yeah. So that's why people think it's around that time. But actually, it was before then, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
It was indeed so. It was before then. So let's carry on going back and back.
Well, I don't know. Perhaps it was here where we came out of the Ice Age.
Right, possibly.
Because obviously bees die in the cold, and
they do.
Maybe they didn't survive the Ice Age.
Absolutely, that's a fair point as well. How did they survive the Ice Age? That's a big, big question. So we know they're with us in current day, or they've been with us all this time. We're moving back in time. But it's incredible that science actually tells us that bees came about and joined us on this evolutionary trail in the Cretaceous period of the dinosaurs, which is way, 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 way back there. And if you recall earlier, Chris said some of our insects were a little bit bigger earlier in the times way back. They were.
They were
absolutely right.
because there was more oxygen in the atmosphere.
So they were definitely
Animals
bigger.
and plants grew larger.
They did. But science tells us it's in the Cretaceous period that bees started to evolve, and wasps, and some of the other pollinators. I think dragonflies were like a metre big or something. Yeah. It was quite incredible.
Can you imagine a bee the size of a basketball?
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah, it's quite scary, absolutely. So that's where they are, and they've been with us right the way through. I don't know how they completely managed to survive the Ice Age. I guess they burrowed maybe, or that's a mystery to me. I don't know how they did that, but I know they did because they carried on through Stonehenge, through Egypt, through Athens. People used to make mead, didn't they, out of honey?
Honey, that's right.
Honey
Yes,
mead.
yes.
A lot of the monks in England used to make that, didn't they?
They still do, actually.
They do, absolutely. And we also know, obviously, there was the honey in Tooting Carmichaels' casket. Absolutely. Romans used to love honey as well.
Yes.
I mean, it's incredible. The product was amazing. More mead probably around this time, I would have thought as well. But it's only really this kind of period of time that bees have been in decline. They've been having a field day all the way through. And it's really only this time that possibly bees have been having a bit of a downtime. And so I believe we can turn this around. I believe we can actually help bees. And one of the main things that we can do as individuals and as families and as schools, and what we can do is obviously plant more flowers. Plant more flowers to give the bees and all the pollinators the nectar-rich source of flowers that they actually need to survive and thrive. It's incredible. The nectar gives them the energy so they can fly around. Then they do their amazing work doing the pollination, and then some bees actually make honey.
Bees declining somewhere between the mid-Victorian age up to modern day. It's really, really important to ask the question, why? Why have our wildlife suffered so much? Is it because of the development? Is it because of chemicals? Is it because of even down to radio masts and the signals we send out through our mobile phones?
We do need to find some harmonious options, definitely, for the bees. I mean, obviously, we can do the planting the wildflowers. We can actually do that in our gardens, in our fields. I mean, you at your school probably have an amazing field, and what you could do is actually portion a section of it and plant them with wildflowers, and then you can actually see the benefit, because I don't think there's anything better for children in a way to get active, to plant a wildflower strip. And then 3-4 months' time, when those plants are coming up and the flowers are there, you will see what amazing work you've done, because you will see the bees coming in and the pollinators coming in and loving the nectar-rich source that you've provided. And you should be patting yourselves on the back at that point, because you have made such a difference for those animals.
We're often asked the question, what's the best honey that you can eat? And the obvious answer to that is, well, it's the local honey, the honey that is produced closest to you, because it contains the nectar of all the plants and the fruits and that are grown near you. If we suffer from hay fever, it's often a reaction, it's an allergic reaction to pollen and dust from the plants that grow around us. Now, honey contains essences of those very flowers, which will give us a resistance to that hay fever. Well, there you go, and that's why the best honey for you is the honey that's grown as close to you as it can be.
So let's talk about the benefits of honey. Now, it's not just that sweet, lovely, rich, sticky stuff that we put on our buttered toast in the morning.
No, it's not.
There's a lot more to it than that.
No. It's got medicinal purposes. As we said before, it's the local honey is probably the best for you, but it helps. We use it in cough sweets, in medicines. We use it to flavour foods. We use it to preserve things.
I know if I've got a sore throat, for instance, I'll reach for a honey and lemon cough sweet, definitely. Or I'll make myself a honey and lemon drink, because honey, like Chris says, has medicinal purposes. Raw honey can even heal wounds, so it's used in medicine as well. It's an incredible product, it really is. So it's like liquid gold in lots of ways.
But it takes a lot of work to make honey.
It does.
One bee in its lifetime produces 1/12 of a teaspoon.
Now have a think about that for a moment, because the bees we're talking about are honeybees, and they live, like Phoebe does, probably about 5 to 6 weeks, something like that. We've already discussed that they need to forage 2,000 flowers per day. And like Chris says, they produce 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in their lifetime.
Putting it another way, that's 12 bees make 1 teaspoon. And if you can imagine you're holding a teaspoon in front of you, that's a flat teaspoon, not heaped. And how many of us put heaped teaspoonfuls of honey on our toast or bread in the mornings?
So we need to give something back, because the bees work incredibly hard for us, and like we said, we need to give them back something that can benefit them, and something that gives them that sustainability. And what we need to give them is obviously some flowers. And we can do that. The bigger picture is the fact that they're in decline because of the pesticides possibly that are being used, but there's global efforts that are looking after that, and they're going to be addressing that. The farming, for instance, in this country is looking into that right now, and they're going to be addressing that too. We're trying to work more organically in our farms at the moment, so those concerns are being looked at. But what we can do, what you can do, what we can do is plant more wildflower seeds, because like we said, 97% of our meadows have disappeared completely, and those bees are having a real hard job trying to find the flowers that they need to forage to make this delicious honey.
If you think that 12 bees make 1 teaspoon, how many bees do you reckon it took to make this small jar of honey?
Which is 340 grams. So there's a certain amount of maths there, isn't there?
Far too much for me today, but probably thousands of bees.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's for all the reasons we've discussed, the importance of bees, the importance of pollination, the importance of honey and all the uses that it has, the biodiversity that bees provide for us with all the crops and everything that they do, the symbiotic relationship they have with plants and the importance of that. Don't you think, Chris, we need to have some respect for our bees?
Absolutely, and if you consider through their lifetime, a bee will travel about 850 kilometres. Now, if you scale that up to a human being, that's the equivalent of, say, you or me going around the planet 1.5 times.
It's mind-blowing. It really is. It's just incredible. So that's why we wrote Phoebe the Bee, the #1 most important living species on this planet. They deserve so much respect, they deserve so much love, and they deserve us to help them. I think it's time we all helped them. So I'm sure you'll be able to find some wildflower seeds in the future and go out and scatter them on your gardens and on your green areas. And like I said, maybe your school would arrange an area of your school playing field to actually dedicate to the pollinators and to the bees. That would be fabulous. Okay, well, we've looked at bees, we've looked at Phoebe the Bee, and now we actually know why they're in decline, what we need to do about it, and how easy it is for us to actually take action, which is great. Doesn't that make you feel good? That you can actually make a difference, and no one person is too small to make a difference. And I think that's a fantastic thing too. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our presentation here, talking to you at the Youth Climate Summit 2020. It's been a total joy, so thank you so much for being there. Now, the team at the Youth Climate Summit have asked us to close on 3 statements. Now, one is our vision statement, how we want the world to be. Chris?
Our first vision statement is going to be a world that is more in harmony with nature, a world that gives back more than it takes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Simple as that.
Absolutely, it is as simple as that. I think we need to be more aware of the world and what we take from it. And like Chris said, it is simple. We need to give back more than what we take. Now, the second thing is our action or our pledge, where we ask you guys out there to do something. Now, we've probably asked you to do quite a bit already, what with planting wildflower seeds, which is a great step forward. But you can also do more to help the bees and the pollinators. We haven't touched on the fact that you can put up the solitary bee homes that you can make. You know, the ones that are like the bamboo tubes that you get? Well, they're incredible because they allow bees to go in there, solitary bees, put in an egg, put in a little bit of pollen, put in a little bit of nectar, close up the hole completely, and then in the next season, in the spring, you get a brand new bee emerging. So you can do that. You can take action yourselves by planting the wildflower seeds and also putting up some of those solitary bee hotels that are very easy to make out of bamboo sticks, or you can buy them as well.
And the last thing is a call for our world leaders. We need a clear global programme of action to put together a programme that protects our world's forests, ecostructures and biodiversity. It's important that we now take this in hand. We've only borrowed the planet from our children. We don't own it.
No, absolutely. We are guardians of this planet. We're not controllers of it. We're not the bosses of it. We are guardians, and we need to, as we said, work in harmony, protect it, and look after it, because it's the most beautiful planet. It really is. And we need to treasure it in so many ways. So I think that really brings us to the end of our presentation, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and I'm glad to have been part of it.
And thank you so much for listening to our Phoebe the Bee presentation, for learning about Phoebe, and for taking part in this. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been a total joy connecting with you today.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Bye-bye.